Welcome back. In the previous segment, I was talking about Babel's themes, Babel's opposing elements, and how it started. In this segment, however, I'll be talking about Babel's representation in color. And I'm going to use the exact phrase as how I used to start the first segment. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I could not find any meaning to color on my first viewing. It felt as though the color in this film had no meaning at all. It felt like every color in this film was just there to be there, with no meaning or no symbolism whatsoever. But the more I thought to myself, how did this director craft this beautifully woven movie without incorporating color into its dynamic? So the more I began to think, the more I began to draw conclusions, the more I began to match the lines. And finally, I have found meaning to color. Not all of the colors of the rainbow, of course, but particularly two colors in this movie, red and white. Red standing for love and white standing for regret. Now, how I came to these conclusions. First, I would like to elaborate that love is present throughout this whole movie, throughout this four direct point of view. Same goes with white. That's why we shall first take a look at red with the eyes of each POV with the formula the movie has given us. That would mean from Yusuf to Emilia to Richard and then to Chieko. So that's it. Let's take a look at Yusuf first. If you see on the screen, particularly on the right, you can see Yusuf's clothes painted in red. Throughout this whole film, he does not change once. His attire remains consistent until the end. If you were to want to come to my conclusion as to why I think red is love, you would have to fast forward a bit up to the shooting scene between the police, Yusuf, Ahmad, their father. It has been established that Yusuf is very talented with the gun. A talent that would only doom their family, proven with the scene. And with that in mind, you would think that red symbolizes violence. That is what red is normally associated with. It is what is commonly referred to. But in this scene, although it almost plays out as violence, because Yusuf doesn't stop at killing one police officer, he still battles. But only when his brother bleeds his blood out does he go to surrender. He goes down the hill, he begs, not out of fear for the authorities, but out of fear for losing his brother, out of love for his family. Because of this scene, I think red is love. He embodies this. But he's not the only character that embodies red is love. There are four distinct perspectives, four distinct fates that I've said before, that I've established before, and all of these fates have red is love in them. So that's it. Let us move on to Amelia. Moving on to the next point of view, arguably the most important point of view, if you were to want to take my thought on why red is love into account. It is a view belonging to Amelia's. It is the most important because this is the point of view that solidified my thoughts on why red is love. For me to make sense, you would actually have to fast forward to when she is dragging her tired body across the desert, barren field. Now, I say this because look at the composition of the shot. Her figure is the only thing that is highlighted there on this barren wasteland, and yet the sky remains clearly blue. Although blue is belong to the composite of white, something that I'll touch on later for it to make sense when I talk about why white is regret. But ignoring the fact for now, you can see that she is clearly meant to be the highlight of this scene. And if you see the experiences that she had to go through so far, it would make sense. She is forced to leave the kids alone. If she had a choice in this scene, she would have stayed there. But to stay there would mean to equally die together, to die of starvation, to die of dehydration. Therefore, she had to look for help. But she didn't want to, and this is signified. I know this is signified because look at her shawl. Her shawl, throughout two scenes of this, through agonizingly long scenes, her shawl falls backwards. Her shawl is pushed by the wind backwards, the opposite direction to where she is heading for help. Her love is somewhere else. It is belonging to the kids where she is indirectly abandoning. Because of this, her shawl falls backwards because she didn't really make the right decision. If you think about it, would they really have died of dehydration? Would the cops actually come to find her before that? This movie really makes you think about that, really makes you feel on what you will do if you are in that exact situation. This is why, or another reason as to why red is love. That's it, let us move on to the next point of view. Richard's POV doesn't start off with a lot of red. In fact, it starts off with more white than red. But red, it is still present. Let us see their first appearance in this film. You'll see what I mean. Right before the shot changed, you can see that the table was draped in a red tablecloth. This symbolizing their lack of love for each other, symbolizing their reason for this very trip, to mend their relationship. But when she gets shot, when she bleeds out, when her white clothes is sprayed in blood, only then does their relationship actually mend. Only then does their relationship become closer. When she is bleeding, when there is red present on her white clothes, when her blood is sprayed on Richard's clothes as well, only then does their relationship forge to become something closer. And to cap it all off, let us take a look at Chieko's point of view. Finally, we have Chieko's story, a story with the least amount of red in it. Now, this could be argued because her story actually revolves around finding love, finding companionship, and that lack of red could be representing that story itself. A story about failing to find love. Because only at the end of the movie, only at the end of her arc, does she finally find companionship. And that is with a figure that was always in front of her father. Before this, a detective visited her house and she gave him a letter. And when he was on his way to a restaurant, there were sprinkles of red quite everywhere around him. The lanterns behind him, the traffic lights, all representing a companionship that she failed to capture. A companionship she failed to get. That is my definition or my justification on why red is love. When talking about white in Babel, I couldn't really garner much meaning from it at first when comparing to red, where red was so dominant at times where it felt like it needed to have a meaning behind it. It needed to have an emotion behind it, but white was more subtle. And the reason I gave white the meaning of regret lies in the characters of Babel. Let's say, for instance, Yusuf. His shirt itself was white and red representing the love he has for his family, and white representing the regret he took for taking that gun up and shooting at the bus. And of course, red is more subdued. Red is more dominant in his shirt because his love for his family is more than the regret he felt by shooting the bus. This is because, remember, when he shot the bus, it was an activity, it was a challenge from his brother. Although it may not seem like it, was bonding time with his brother. And then let us go to Amelia. Remember when I was talking about her tired body dragging through the desert fields of Morocco? And the skies were contrasting her small red figure. Those skies represent the regret she felt for leaving those kids behind. Maybe if she stayed with them for a little longer, the help would really have come, instead of them going missing for a while. And let us go to Richard's POV, or not really Richard, but Susan. Her first appearance, she adorned a white shirt. The white shirt represented the regret for her coming there, for her choosing to trust in Richard to come to a foreign country where she is very, very uncomfortable in. And of course, she will eventually be drenched in blood. And that blood, of course, represents that she still has love for Richard. And let us go to Chieko, where white is not really seen most of the time, or well, white with reason is not seen most of the time. And I want to tie it to her final scene when the camera pushes back to reveal her city. Her room is one of the only few rooms that is in an orange hue. The rest of the lights, the rest of the rooms in the apartments are all white in color, and the camera pushing back as she embraces her father, meaning her regrets are flying away. Her burdens are finally releasing. This is why I think white represents regret. It's a consistent flow that I have noticed throughout the film. Whether it is an accurate assumption, I can't be so sure, but it is, in the end, my assumption for this movie.